Invisible Experts Podcast.
Welcome everyone to Invisible Experts Podcast. This is our little show about the sustainable talk show. In today's episode, which is titled The SDGs at a Crossroad, Celebrating Achievements, Debating the Future, Part 2. I'm your host, Andrés Morales, as we dive into what sustainable development is, what is happening with the SDGs. So I'm very happy having today two incredible guests. First, we have Tanja Wohlrab, a practitioner in sustainability strategy. She's been practicing a lot about sustainability and so on. So we want to bring this kind of practical side with years of experience in trying to build these sustainable initiatives across different sectors. Welcome, Tanja. And with us, we have also Rui Castaño, an academic specializing in sustainable development and cross-border cooperation, bringing a wealth of research insights to our discussion today. Welcome, Rui.
Welcome. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you, guys. So first of all, if you don't mind, your name, what are you guys doing and what you've been up to?
Mm-hmm.
Let's go with Tanja.
With me first.
Sure.
Well, firstly, I would like to say thank you for inviting me on the podcast. And just, I'm Tanja Wohlrab. Let me just say my name. Thank you to you for inviting me, but also remembrance of how we first met. And it's actually 10 years ago.
Yeah.
That you and Sarah connected with me, and you came to Iceland and you did a documentary on social entrepreneurs, and you were doing a similar kind of process of highlighting the players in the field, who are the ones doing social enterprise in Iceland. And at that time, it was still very new. So I want to give you guys kudos for the work that you're doing then and now, because I see this as a similar highlighting people in the field and giving them a space to talk. So thank you for that.
Thanks a lot.
To answer your question, what I've been doing. So as I mentioned, I was in social enterprise focus 10 years ago. And maybe about 4 years ago, it's still been part of me, but 4 years ago is when Totelly was birthed. And that was mostly from a process of reading a book by Daniel Christian Ball. He wrote the book of Regenerative Cultures. And that inspired us in terms of looking at sustainability and impact in a whole different way. And I think we'll talk about that during the discussion here. But in a nutshell, what Totelly is, we focus on 3 core pillars: connection with self, connection with others, and connection with nature or nature-led experiences. We run events locally in community and with our partners. And we're also developing a platform for facilitators and an app called Totally Human and Totally Facilitated. In a nutshell, that's what we've been doing, but I'm sure I'll talk more about it in detail as we go.
Sure. Thanks for that,
Thank
Tanja. Actually, it was really nice when we met. Wow,
Mhm.
how long? 10 years ago, huh?
Yeah, right?
Yeah. And in fact, like we went to see this documentary, which was very helpful. We also published a chapter about it.
Right. Yeah.
And we were trying to highlight it, as you put it, people in the sector who are trying to generate such value, as a social and environmental value from their organizations, from their companies. Now with you, Rui, if you introduce yourself, who are you and what you
Of
up
course,
to?
thank you so much, first of all, to be here in this podcast, and also, of course, with you, because we, as you said, well, we met a few times, but we are close friends. So, well, with Andres, and it's a pleasure to be here also with Tanja, because it's also we have here some experience from the practice, but I believe it's quite interesting. Well, my name is Rui Alexandre Castanho. I'm from Portugal, Spain. Well, I have the both nationalities, but right now I'm work. Let's starting from because it's a little bit tricky. Let's start from my main institution because I'm the Vice Dean of Sustainable Development in the WSB University in Poland, and also the Vice Coordinator of a research center in Portugal, Valoriza, in IPP Porto Alegre, and also working for the European institutions as the Portuguese ambassador for the EU for the climate pact change from European Union. So it just started like 1 year ago or so, 1 year something ago, and also as Tanja has mentioned, like in off record, as also professor, invited professor in University of Johannesburg. So basically, well, I'm a world citizen by now. We travel all over the world, so it's quite. It was sometimes it's not fun anymore because you're crossing sometimes even the 100 flights per year as this year. But right now, I'm giving you this speech from Madeira, for example, from Madeira Island, and tomorrow I'll be in another
Not too
place.
bad.
But yeah, not too bad, not too bad. But well, it's no, everything like this is better than work. No, but to be honest, it seems no, it seems quite interesting. But we are talking about like for the like 6 years or so, sleeping like 4 or 5 hours per night, quite heavy all the time in planes. But yeah, it's we felt at the same time with this kind of position, the social responsibility quite heavy as the same that probably Tanja feel the same. And we trying to, by the end of the day, we go through, of course, to try to do this kind of social work, of course, trying to develop like a better society that's trying to let better or trying to let some like this kind of guidelines for the future generations, also to try to bring our research and trying to doing even better because it's like the way that it is. And yeah, basically it's what is moving us. So I believe that is the same feeling that's on the other side. So and of course also a professor in UNIR with a short with only a short time that I give to UNIR as well, where the colleague Andrés is too. But yeah, also from UNIR.
Fantastic. Okay, before we going into the segment, because I want to talk about first of all about the progress of the SDGs, I would love to know, Tanja, from your practice, how do you perceive, the SDGs and whether or not you try to implement in a way these kind of SDG values onto your practice from your organization and initiatives?
So, as I mentioned, the framing that we've been implementing in Totelly and really building it into the values from the very beginning is looking at us as both from a human perspective, but also being part of an ecosystem. And that is why we've been focusing on, self-connection first, meaning the human side. And I don't know if you know the terms of the inner development goals. So I love that complement to the CSRs because it brings the human element as well. We need to look at ourselves and how we are approaching, sustainability and our citizenship in the world. So, that's where the self-connection comes in first. To answer your question of how we've been approaching sustainability, really we see it as a journey and a framework. And again, that's also something that I've taken to heart from looking at the work of Will Reed and Daniel Christian Ball. And sustainability from that perspective is looking at a way of it's the point that we're doing less harm or zero harm to the planet. But then there's another journey that goes ahead where we're adding and creating more wealth to society, more healing, more positive influence. So this is the scope that we've been leaning towards more because it fits better with us as an organization. And how we've been approaching it is really at first starting with taking it when we started with Totelly, it was a long learning journey into what was required of our local environment. Really looking at the ecosystem as well as the social system and saying where is it that pain points are that we could have an impact. So rather than looking at sustainability first, we were looking at where can we be of most impact. And from that, then of course it aligns with certain SDGs, because the framework is very broad and very, has very different areas. We've mostly lent towards the social side of things rather than environmental, just because our team is very social, as you can tell. We lean towards how are we feeling, how are we doing, how are we relating to one another. So I think out of the three, social, ecological, and environment, we've lent towards that. There's also a fourth element here that I enjoy, that, for example, the Gaia Institute and their training, they have brought in the worldview aspect. So we also lean towards that. How do we perceive, our role in society? How do we perceive ourselves as stewards of our land and taking ownership and being more responsible in our actions? How we've been working with SDGs is it's a two-way process, working with the passion first and the need first, and then seeing how the SDGs, which ones would fit most aligned with that. There was a second part to your question, wasn't there?
No, I
How
think
are
you
we
just
working
answered
with
it, though. No,
SDGs?
it's perfect.
Yeah.
Actually, I was, but thank you, though, because
Yeah.
I was amazed how you actually were talking about our inner individual, right?
Yeah.
Because I agree. I think everything has to come within first,
Yeah.
and then you'll be able to change
Yeah.
the things outside.
Yeah.
Kind of a Hegelian aspect of it. I don't know if you wish to look at it. I love it. And that's why I want to just a little bit, if you don't mind, to elaborate, because my perception when I went to Iceland is like I could see this triple P, right? Planet, people, purpose, right? From my perspective, okay, you guys are very respectful towards nature. I suppose because nature sometimes can be brutal, right? I mean, winter there is just in your face. I mean, you cannot really, sometimes you feel how little you are in this planet, isn't it? Right? And I can see the way that you were describing it. Like, okay, we are humbly here and we need to respect what is outside. So my question is, like, do you think then you became an Islander, hence you trying to kind of project this kind of cultural aspect in between people, planet, and purpose through your initiatives?
Good question. Yao is yes in Icelandic. I think it's a bit of both, because I see a framework is there as a guidance. The SDG is a guidance, right? It's a framework. It's a way to enable us to see how we are. It's a guidance. It's a let's focus here and make sure this is taken care of and this is taken care of. From the perspective that I'm looking at is, and this is what I see in practitioners as well, and maybe I'm crossing through all the questions that you're doing already.
Sorry, yeah.
And it comes from a desire to meet a need somewhere in society that they see is lacking, or it's not working so well, and so they create projects that meet that need. And it just so happens that it fits with an SDG, right? Because it could be equality, or it could be taking care of biodiversity. It could be, so it's a very broad. And so your question of how does it relate to me is coming here to Iceland and viewing the nature and the people. They are very much in reverence to the nature here. I absolutely agree with that. And because they have lived in such a harsh climate for so many, generations, that it's become part of them, and they they respect it as well as, to a degree, take care of it. We're now more moving into cities, so there's a bit of a, countryside city kind of approach as well, which is happening everywhere. And it's a society that also takes care of each other because they're all families and everybody's, been for centuries, been helping each other and looking after each other. And so there's this mutuality and community that already exists. And what has more so recently, because of influx of people coming from other countries, this is new for them. So this is a need, for example, that we have seen in society, is how to create community for people coming into Iceland, that it's new, and how do we create community, and how do we, build more resilience within people that are not native to Iceland, how to integrate them, but also how to become, this is your new home, how do you become a steward of your new home? How do you take care of it? How do you get to know it? How do you, be in right place of the land that you're in and take ownership for it, and also want to add an impact through your actions, and not just be here, but actually live here as one with the land, as the people as well.
Thank you.
Answer your question?
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's just a conversation, right? Thank you, Doc. Thanks. Rui, like from your experience, right, in academia, okay, before we go into the actual points of the SDGs, how it is now, because 15 years ago, even the SDGs kind of started in 2015 and so on. How is it in terms of research? Do you think it grew massively? There are more interest about it. So do we know more now about the impact that we made onto the planet, or less? Or what do you think about it?
Thank you so much for the question, Andres. In fact, it's quite interesting question, because I do believe that we produce much more now about sustainable development goals and this, and a lot of research and reports and everything, and all the meetings and this and that is about the SDGs. But for my surprise, we can divide this question into, for example, that part. I do believe that, yeah, sure, definitely we do a lot, because not only it's easier, let's do it as more transparent as possible, because it's easier, for example, for you to, if you go into these SDGs for getting these European or these funding projects, if you fall into these SDGs. But as you mentioned, because they are defined like several years ago, and why just we starting right now with this? Why not start it like before? That's my surprise that's in this issue. Why not starting to work on this and only started like when after the pandemic almost? So we have we are in 2024, almost 2025. We have 5 years for the end of this set of goals. So I believe that we started too late. And once more, the funding and the programs of funding, is who runs all this. That's why we develop, and also me the same. We also focus more into this part, unfortunately, because we should starting before. And for example, it's quite a surprise for me. But also we have here a point that is how we can, if we have better impact or not. I cannot tell exact answer, because, for example, we have several meetings in the parliament or in the commission, in the EU institutions, and they are still debating, for example, this kind of close groups about this kind of into the cycle sometimes, about how we're going to do these kind of indicators to measure the impact of each of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. So, but we are talking about still how we can develop the indicators to measure something that will going to end in 5 years. So how you can have time for you to create indicator, so validate that indicator, put that indicator into work, and then if not if you count your region, well, wherever it's not going properly, for example, that sustainable development goal. So how we can still have time to rearrange that policy and starting to go to the right path. So it's almost, to be honest, almost impossible to do it. So I'm not sure if you are better. Probably I'll say yes, because once you are working so much on this topic, yeah, of course, there are some extractive principles and guidelines that could be interesting, but if you're going to do this for the future, for example, the next SDGs that probably will take not for 10 years, but perhaps for 20 years, for 2050, for example, I expect that we're starting to work as soon as possible, not only like 6-7 years before, that we still not have time. And the debates, like from the top of the hierarchy, there are still debates about how we can create these kind of indicators. So we are in 2025 almost, so it's quite surprising for me, to be honest. So
Sure. That's perfect, because then we can go to our first segment. It's about the progress of the SDGs, right? I mean, in theory, we've made significant strides with the SDGs since their adoption in 2015. I mean, there are a lot of reports and literature who try to back this up, because there are a lot of reports that highlight progress, such as reduction in global poverty, improved access to clean water and sanitation, right? For instance, in terms of the SDG 1, global poverty reduction, according to the studies, there was a significant progress about it. Like in theory, global poverty rates decreasing from 15.7% in 2010 to 9.2 in 2017, although it's been acknowledged a little bit of a setback, right? With the COVID and an ongoing conflicts, right? Also, in terms of the health and well-being, the SDG 3, advances have been made, particularly in reducing maternal and child mortality. But of course, it doesn't matter what SDG we're looking at, there are challenges. So let me start with you, Roy. From an academic perspective, which areas of the SDG that you are aware of has been progressed, or perhaps have been the most surprising or promising?
Well, Andres, it's a tricky question, because in fact, so they have like a large abroad, for example. We have several, and there are quite of those are relevant, but you need to back a little bit to the past, for example, because in the root of everything, I believe that is the strategic planning and the sustainable development in a strategic way. For example, because we have like 17 sustainable development goals, it's impossible for you to give answer to them all. So we need to try, for example, as a region, as a municipality, as a country, try to figure out which are the most relevant one, that the more priority to give answer to those ones. So, but I believe that in fact you mentioned some points that were quite relevant here. For example, the COVID-19, the pandemic that that's changed drastically our models in almost every field. And also we have like this dynamic right now, this geopolitical, the world is changing. You are living in a confusion time, because it's do not know what's going to happen tomorrow. So everything just changes so much. But if I can mention some, perhaps, let's say 2 or 3 indicators that are the most that I felt, at least from my point of view, that were even one have been lose a little bit of momentum, was the climate change. Because the COVID and everything, we see in the results of how it works if we do it, like stop a bit, for example, with the emissions and this and that, so we can see, and therefore it was also creating some momentum. But at the same time, after all these wars, also the budgets in Europe have changed, so we have not so much help for that goal. But even so, I believe that was advanced. But well, we have also the EU Green Deal, that's also important. And also, for example, the well-being, also as you mentioned, it to increase, because the pandemic also reveals, for example, for the working perspective, for example, for the workers, and also the psychological point of view, that it was demystify somehow several points that we are perhaps or afraid or shy to say, I don't know, but it was demystify a lot the pandemic. And also with that, I believe that's somehow also this kind of the work and well-being, and also this perhaps this life on land and water, also connected with the COVID-19. After that's the effect that we've seen have increased somehow, or at least I'm not sure if that exactly increased, but at least we have more awareness for that. But if I need to mention one that have increased, in my opinion, it was the well-being. I believe that increased, and also the aware about the work well-being, and also this quite of issues connected to it.
Okay, thanks for that. Tanja, How do you see, from your perspective,
Mhm.
the SDGs influencing the day-to-day operations
Mhm.
of any sustainability project? You can even
Mhm.
exemplify from from your experience, but also how would you say such framework, as you put it,
Mhm.
influence the day-to-day operations of any project or organization or entity?
Mhm. Sure. I could give some examples of ours and our projects that we've been working on. So in our development of Totelly, we began the process of working with an organization in America called Post-Growth Institute. And they run events or they train individuals in a process called the offers and needs market. And this is this is one of the examples that I'd like to give of an exercise or a project that is small effort, but also has many touch points in the SDGs. And this is what is something that as a practitioner, one can magnify one's impact with small actions. So the offers and needs market is a beautiful process that I came across and I've run more than 30 events now locally and also in Romania with our partner. And we're also training people in Romania as well, in Iceland right now with the project. And in this offers and needs market process, individuals come together in community, and the facilitator takes them through a 2-hour process where the individuals get a chance to reflect and then share and then exchange. First, their offers. So they have a process to consider what they can offer in society. What would they like to offer in community? And you have some beautiful comments where people say, oh, I never knew I had so much to offer people, or they have that opportunity to give, and also understand in the areas where they would like to in society or in community. And then we also go through a process of need. So then we as humans are a bit challenged when we ask, what do you need? Because we feel in our bodies a bit uncomfortable expressing our needs. So this kind of normalizes the process of it's okay to express what you want to request or need from others to fulfill your life or your projects or your community needs. So we've had wonderful experiences where people have met close friends through it, projects, employment. So you can hear just from the outcomes from this, some SDGs being highlighted, economic, we've got well-being, we've got through the process, they're also sharing some ideas of projects. So there's innovation happening. There's also many different touch points, not only through the process, but also the outcomes of the process. So this is just one example of a wonderful ripple effect of a project. I also want to highlight is our partners. So we were lucky to receive funding from Erasmus Plus for our project called Connection Regenerator. And it's a 14-month project. And in this project, as I mentioned, we're also training facilitators in this process. So they'll be running these events in Romania as well. And we will be growing the number of facilitators we have here. Also to meet various different communities in Iceland so that we're, finding those areas where the need is for communities to connect, So it could be both underserved communities as well as women's groups and so forth. So in Romania, our partner is called My Bine, and I can't talk about them enough because they are just amazing in the work they have done. So they have their main organization is My Bine. It's an NGO, but they have also created 2 social enterprises. One is called CUIB, CUIB, and the other is called Redu. CUIB is like a social space where they also serve food. So they do everything. I think they had a project where they went around Europe to meet the most sustainable restaurants and community centers. And out of like 10 criteria, they were the one that had the most of the tick lists. And they do everything from sourcing locally to ethical produce to reducing waste to they are a community space, so they educate people coming into the space. They use, of course, zero waste. So their example is just wonderful in terms of meeting so many SDGs in, again, a very beautiful space, very welcoming space, and also every smaller detail is thought about in terms of how can we make an impact, how can we lower our water use, how can we reduce waste, how can we serve, and they serve soup to people that don't have access to food from waste, and so forth. There's just so many different examples of things they have done in this one space. And then the other project called Retu, they reuse discarded material and create unique pieces from it. So they have fashion designers that create these wonderful pieces from reused material. And so they have both these social enterprises. So we went there as a learning study to Iași in Romania to meet them. And there was, in terms of our partnership, it was very beautiful, connection and experience. So I just want to highlight how the SDGs come through by doing these very concentrated projects, but are able to meet various different standards, and of course meet the indicators or measurements and so forth. So
very interesting. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
sharing this. And actually, I want to ask you to close this segment with you in
Sure.
terms of the progress, because we met
Yeah.
10 years ago, right?
Mm.
And we didn't talk about Agenda 2030, SDGs. It wasn't about it. It was about how organizations or entities were trying to generate value out of just the sake of saving society or contributing to society. So could you see some progress in these type of organizations creating more value and generating more social and environmental value since the introduction of the SDGs, at least in Iceland?
I would say so. I would definitely say there's more awareness. I would say the sector has grown significantly where there's more education in sustainability, there's more projects coming about, and awareness of the different areas. Of course, in all societies there are challenges, and it's not, for example, our energy, we have renewable energy, and there's discussions of, possibly, going into natural conservational areas to extract the energy, so because we use geothermal energy, there's this debate about that. So, but there is awareness, and there's constant discussion, and also the society here is very open to discussions. And I think, as Rui mentioned in his discussion of, there's constant talk in Parliament and different areas, and how are we going to meet the goals by 2030? I'm also not sure if we would meet it by 2030. I would like to see some more radical approaches. And also a wider discussion, a wider invitation of not just having the indicators from the top, but bringing the players on the field into the discussion, and actually finding these examples where we can have events or projects that are these ripple effects of meeting many indicators in one project, for example. And I think there are solutions out there, and they are, from my perspective, more nature-based and working more with working with the land and the soil, and working with communities in a similar way. This has many ripple effects, and I would, yes, but I really don't think we will meet unfortunately, the 2030 goal. We are talking too much and not doing enough. But I understand the need for having the indicators so you know that you're doing it, but it has to be a two-way process.
Sure. And actually, like, as you pointed out, we wouldn't make it. I mean, there is so much to keep doing, and hence the African Agenda 2063, right? Because since the beginning, the entire continent was like, no, that's crazy. I mean, we have in our list of priority a lot of things to overcome first, and then we can actually join this kind of global venture in trying to meet these sustainable development goals. So they say, like, since the beginning, they wouldn't make it. They have their own agenda. It's called the 2063, right, Rui? I'm not sure about it, but it is. And with Rui, just to finalize this segment about the progress, you go in a lot of conferences and meetings at, in the European Union, especially in the UN. And in fact, you almost start to work with the UN. So you're very familiar with what's going on. I want to ask you, man, if you identified through your research and through the research of others in conferences, whether there are progress or not globally, not only in the West Hemisphere.
Thank you so much for the question, Andres, and also just to add adding some part also to the previous answer from Tanja, but also to this question, because I believe that's totally connected. So yes, once more, I do believe that once you have like this framework that all of us trying to, or at least following the same guidelines, to trying to go to the same goals by the end of the day. So well, eventually you're gonna progress. Even we have several setbacks, because we can say, okay, it's quite broad, it's quite we're starting too late, but okay, but we also have like this pandemic COVID-19 crisis. We have like a war in Europe right now, it's still ongoing. We have like the Middle East on fire again. We have the China-Taiwan tensions. We have Venezuela. We have a lot of conflict all over the world. Our dynamic is like, it's like a lot of dynamism, but even so, and yes, and back to your question. So I do believe that even, of course, there are geographies that we can notice that it has advanced more than others. I believe that in general, even if you're not going to make it, that is very likely. Let's be clear that probably we're not going to make it. So but it's okay not going to make it, because we learn for the future, for the next set of goals that probably not going to be the same. But the point is, we're going to learn perhaps how to deal with this issue from a different point of view. But even so, I do believe if we're not going to make it, but at least we have made several progresses, even if not all the geography, because this is totally understandable, because not all geographies have felt the same impacts, because, and you knew well, also you work with this kind of scenarios. And when you go, for example, to these, I not say emerging countries, because many of these countries are not still an emerging countries, but also not say like third world countries, but also like with less recourse countries, let's say, that's undeveloped countries. I guess it's the better way to say this. So sometimes when asking some kind of goals like the environmental protection, this and that, it's quite when you go to the field, it's quite easy. For example, when we are into these EU offices and these EU hemicycles and these EU meetings, it's quite easy to talk about how they should do, okay? Or even the United Nations meetings, it's quite easy to say how they should do, but when you go to the field, you understand that this is quite ridiculous sometimes to asking some kind of development goal, or this kind of goals, once the population do not have like the basic needs assured. So the population let's be honest, by the end of the day, if you not have like the basic assurance, by the end of the day, you not want to care about this kind of development goal, because by the end of the day, you want to have like fresh water, you want to have like food for your kids, you have like at least a house. So this is like the basics. If you not give the basics, it's impossible for you to asking. So kind of the same goals, the same development goals, let's say, that you're asking, for example, for the top country in the world, like in the level of developments. But so it's not, I believe it's not fair for us to asking the same this country. But even so, yeah, I believe that even so, even they not have perhaps not the same level of this or felt the same impact of our work in sustainable development goals. Even so, we have advanced a bit, but even we should take his lesson for the future, like these learn lessons, for example, to the next set of goals, to trying to do things more feasible and more real, because many times these are doing from people that are in office that not know the reality, or at least if they go, there's only know the reality that the leaders or the homologous in these countries or in these geographies, they want that to see. So that's probably one of the biggest setbacks we have when it's starting to work on this on the field, and probably Tanja knows even better than I do when it's starting to work on these issues on the field. Because even sometimes I try to give some policy and some guidelines, and when I go to those geographies, like go in place there, and I say, oh, how can you asking this if the people do not have like the basic needs? So it's difficult. So I believe that we need to start, for example, to figure out that should be more specific or much more personalized, let's say, for different regions. Perhaps we can have like this big set of indicator on these development goals, but after perhaps we can have more specific goals within the realities that's ongoing on the field.
Sure. I think like definitely I would agree with Tanja, and we also complimented that there are more awareness, right? It doesn't matter where you are, at least we talk about sustainability, which is for me one of the key, aspects of this kind of progress. Because, I've recently been to Indonesia and Malaysia, and you can see the SDGs everywhere. People are more aware about the use of plastics, which is a big challenge in the Southeast Asia. If you go into the Latin American region, about mining, conscious mining, like exploitation of the actual natural resources. They're also aware of it, and everybody has the tendency to be, more self-conscious about, okay, what am I doing? Even in terms of recycling, right? Which is a very small step, but still. So this is cool. Thank you, guys. Now we go into the second segment, right? Which is about the challenges and criticism of the SDGs, which exist, right? While the SDGs have been so to success, they aren't without the challenges, right? Critiques often point out issues like which is a huge scope, of the goals. There are some contradictions between some of them. For example, there can be tensions between economic growth and climate action, right? So for instance, there are critiques about, the potential contradictions between some goals like the SDGs, such as economic growth, the SDG 8 and the climate action, no SDG 13, because there is not economic development and growth, if you don't have certain industrial sectors, right? That usually they lead some higher emissions, right? So unless you balance this out with sustainable practices, growth is not the same. Actually, recently I was listening to this Joe Rogan podcast with Donald Trump, and he was brutally honest. He was like, look, my biggest enemy now are the environmentalists. Why? Because, I need the black gold, the black liquid gold. We need oil, right? And he was very honest about it. Like, there are a lot of money involved. There are a lot of employment involved. There is such a big infrastructure who provides a lot of employment. So you can see like a lot of tensions, right? Also financial and resource constraints. the latest resort, like literature and reports, they were suggesting that there is a finance gap of $2.5 trillion annually to achieve the SDGs in developing countries alone. Following what you just said, Rui, right? Like it has to be regional, and also strategically developed, right? So I want to ask you, Rui, could you perhaps try to elaborate on how scholars view the balance between the economic growth and sustainability or other similar challenges? Because I'm pretty sure, like as you said before, from the theory to the practice, there is a huge gap.
Totally. Totally. And Andres, thank you so much for the question. And also, somehow, I believe that you answer, for example, have like this kind of, they're not contradiction, but when you are like a police making and decision making, it's when you see it like starting to develop this kind of regional planning and start these policies. When you look at the goals and say, okay, we need to this economic growth, and also you mentioned about this issue, for example, the United States, because if they want to like to still grow, we have like other source. Okay, but this transition, for example, we cannot do it like from one day to another. And also, I'm an ambassador for the climate pact change from European Union, but I'm conscious about it. So we need to have like this could need to be gradual. So and also we need to find a way that will be because we are talking about sustainability. We have the social, economical, and environmental. It's not only environmental. So we need to try to get like some balance between the three parts. So the point here, and somehow you answer that because we have this kind of, when you look at it, you're trying to get this kind of regional growth, let's say, not even like, but okay, regional growth into this economical point of view, and at the same time trying to protect the environment. And when you're trying to develop these guidelines or these plans of action for of the governments, you felt like sometimes you not even have like all the resources and sometimes also you have the pressure to release that documents, and you cannot do perhaps something with more structure, know how to have all the data. So yeah, it's quite difficult. And also I'm going to bring this issue a little bit also to my field, for example, to the field of cross-border cooperation, because you knew that I work a lot in cross-border cooperation. So here in this field, just to give an example, like this field, for example, in cross-border cooperation, because we work a lot in two different countries, for example, two different regions from two different countries, it's even more complex because even if in one region of one country is already difficult, when you put like this variable about the cross-border cooperation, it's even more difficult because from the theoretical point of view, it's quite easy, and this is quite easy to understand. Also, the strategic planning, we have like 5-6 principles that are quite easy to understand, but the point is when you're trying to put it into practice, it's very difficult because, and I do believe as lower you get into the scale, like from the national to the regional to the local, it's even more difficult in the local level because you have even more interest and conflict of interest, so many tricky ways that something that you cannot control, you not even think about it because you not knew that's reality, how it's gonna goes on that region. So we have like a lot of interest also in these points, and sometimes it gets like this contradiction between the economic growth and the environmental and climate changes issues. And well, we're talking, for example, back on this point about the cross-border cooperation like this, because the environment do not know borders. So once you not know borders, so the point is that we should cooperate instead of this competition all the time. For example, you should have like something more uniformized. For example, not we're talking about the European Union and also these institutions and all of these. We gave the guidelines for all like the best practice or the good practice for the rest of the world, but even within our territories, we not have like something uniformized. So we not even knew sometimes how we're going to manage it in our countries, how we can give some guidelines to the outside world. And the outside world, we use our guidelines and the best practice to use the same. So I guess the process starting to begin like by mistake since the beginning, so since the very beginning. So I do believe that this sets and everything will back to the same. So getting ourselves learn, and also the way that you should communicate perhaps our research, and also the policymakers and the decision makers back into us more often to create this triangle between policy decision makers, let's say, the technical and stakeholders, for example, in the community. So create more this triangle, more cohesion, for example, more with the more robust, and also with more talk between each other. So that is the only way, in my point of view, that we can cooperate. And also, when we talk about this kind of cross-border cooperation, it's more complex for us trying to reach the best results possible, even that's even probably in the next set of goals with all the lesson learned, we still needs to will have challenges and difficulties, of course, because that's always gonna happen. But the point is trying to learn and try to minimize these kind of gaps and this kind of discrepancies, let's say, this kind of contradictions as much as we can. And but in fact, if you're going to explore, it depends on the perspective, they could be like seen as contradictions or not. But like the first looking at it, that will be, of course, perhaps contradictions. And that is something that perhaps the United Nations, for example, for the next set of goals or the next guideline they're going to give us to all of us, probably they should manage a little bit better this kind of goals and the way that they're going to do the marketing and everything about it in a way that will try to minimize as much as you can this kind of contradiction. But even so, they're going to always happen because but yeah, basically I do believe that the issues goes by that field, and the answer will be always cooperation and always trying to create this kind of multidisciplinary approach, and also trying to bring all to the same table. For example, this triangle with the decision makers, with the stakeholders and technicians, for example, and the community, because in the end of the day, the community will be the one that will be that will receive the results of all of these policies. So I believe that this triangle will be like critical for us to avoid this kind of contradictions or to minimize those, or even to amplify some kind of the good impacts that we can still have.
Sure. Thanks for that. That's why, I love to have a practitioner on the table, Tanja, because, from the practice point of view, when you run a business, you run an organization, you run an entity, there is a lot of pressure anyway, to comply with the fiscal, norms, to pay the salary of your staff, to pay yourself. It's hard anyway. Running a business, running an organization, it's a challenge. Okay. And then you added something up, which is okay. You not only have to be worried about how you're going to make it, but also the way you're going to make it. Because now we need to care about society and the environment that before some businesses, they didn't even were aware of it, carbon emissions, the carbon footprint, and so on and so forth. So obviously you've been working in the area for a long time. And since the beginning, your values were aligned with the sustainable world. So you were creating projects and helping businesses and, pushing new initiatives to be more sustainable, conscious about the economic value, okay? Because without honey, no money, no honey, right? So what are the challenges that, for instance, you as a practitioner face, implementing more vastly this kind of, or integrating this kind of SDG framework? What are the challenges that you more face?
Yeah, great questions. And I like the more honey? What was it you said?
More money, more honey. If there is no money, no money, no honey, right?
Right. Very nicely put. Yeah, I mean, most practitioners are, especially here in Iceland, we're small providers. So it always comes down to resources of time and money and knowledge. And the fitting in, your question of working with the SDGs and how do we build that into everything we do. I think the first criteria is, like you said, values. It's looking at baking it into the very beginning. If you're lucky enough to start a project, bake the values and the SDGs into the project from the very beginning. It's much more challenging, as you said, if it's already an existing project, and then you're looking at the SDGs and then figuring out, okay, how are we going to do this and what do we need to change? So that takes much more time and effort from the organization to, build the SDGs afterwards. So baking it into the values and the way you work. In terms of how do we, it's also building in metrics, that being clear on which SDGs you want to focus on, so that will clearly align with your values, right? So the output or the impact that you want to achieve, what SDGs are you following that naturally fit to that? And then creating metrics that are easy to keep updated, because again, you're looking at resources. How much time are you going to spend on keeping track of every little small thing that you're doing? Especially if you're a small practitioner, you have only so much time. So building it into your processes and making sure that you're meeting those key criteria that you have set out from the very beginning. So it's like a continual process. But yes, it always comes down to resources. Time seems to be often a challenge because one has all the, you're still trying to do the business to want to make an impact and to create new projects. And then, of course, the economical aspect of it is making sure, your financial support is covered to meet those needs. I think I have answered that to a degree. Yeah.
Sure, for sure. And actually, guys, I want to make a little
lose track of what the question was. I mean, bring me back.
No, but it's true though, because you are in more pressure, right, onto the businesses, because at the end of the day, okay, you want to deliver your service, you want to create and sell your product, but then under the operational level, you are in more, challenges, right? Because then you have to have a proper green roadmap. Then you need to be more self-conscious about your staff, which in practice is hard, but overall is good. No? Don't you think? Like trying to, practice businesses for doing good I think it's good for society, right?
Yeah.
Then I'm going to make a little exercise for you too, okay?
Okay.
And I want to do it from your perspective, Tanja, as a practitioner, and then you, Rui, as a researcher, okay? According to, I kind of gather like few reports about this, okay? It was 3 reports and it was about 2 papers, scientific papers, okay? And, I will kind of like reading through them, I was trying to compile what are the key challenges of the SDGs. Then I'm going to tell you a list of 7. So from Tanja's perspective, what do you think or you feel are more like close to your ecosystem out of these 7? And then Rui, I want you to think out of these 7, which one academia is less aware about, and also because I think from academia, me as an academic, we tend to be super over positive about this, but also we really need to look very critical about the negative impacts of implementing this, because there are some sectors that are, harmed because of that. Okay, so I'll give you the list, and then we start with Tanja and then with Rui. Is that cool? Yeah, it's clear. Fantastic. So according to this, the strategic literature review, they told me like funding gaps is one, global inequality, key challenges, political instability, weak accountability, overly broad goals, economic versus environmental trade-offs, and global crisis. These are kind of like the summary, if you wish, of the 7 more mentioned challenges according to these reports and papers. So what do you think, Tanja, based on this?
I would say, looking at the ecosystem of Iceland, I would say weak accountability, really.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. And you, Rui?
Andres, looking at this panorama and what's going on all over the world, I will say global crisis because so many studies that we have done, for example, forecasting studies, this and that, so in so many years, so why you cannot predict, okay, this kind of, even the pandemic, but okay, not even talking about the pandemic, but these crises are ongoing right now, so why cannot predict it, for example, before? Well, okay, it's some time, but we have studies about it, but why not have like, I don't know, but more already more awareness about what could going after? Because right now I felt as academics like you, for example, I felt at least that we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow because this is quite a very uncertainty. So I'll say this kind of global crisis. And when I say global crisis, I say like overall, like in also global crisis, I put also the climate change crisis for into this. For example, you saw what's happening. Okay, it's also sometimes we have this returning periods, but you saw what's happened like 2 days ago or yesterday. I'm not sure about, for example, Valencia, but also we have like so climate crisis. We have like also this new conflicts and new escalation of the conflict. So I'll say, yeah, totally, definitely, I say global crisis. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So accountability, which you mentioned before, Tanja, which is true. I mean, it's not really clear what's going on, and then global crisis is true. Okay. Next to we have another segment which I'm very passionate about, which is about conspiracies around the SDGs. Okay. You know, all about this greenwashing. Okay. Because is it true? And I was talking to another colleague of mine. He'd been our podcast. We were talking about washing. And he was like, I agree with him. He says, look, I'm happy with greenwashing as long as they deliver, right? And that's the problem because, again, now everybody has the SDG tag or SDG pin, right? Or the green tag, and we're doing great and so on, but they don't deliver. Hence, in the short term, they create more damage than good because initiatives, I mean, like people like us that we've been working a lot in the sector, we kind of lose credibility. I don't know if you agree, Tanja, like this is the feeling that, oh no, I don't want to talk about this kind of like save the planet thing. I hardly make it at the end of the month. Bio, I don't care, right? So this is all about, and as a consequence of conspiracies around the SDGs, okay? And it's very interesting because this is my perspective, okay, which is of course subjective, but I'm kind of offended because the people who now leading the conversations about the SDGs, about the impact and so on, they have no idea. I mean, they don't. They are not either practitioners or scientists. Now it's in the political arena. And it kind of offended me because they criticize it from their point of view. It's purely ideological, right? And then, there's some interest from the media and so on, but I think this topic might surprise some of our listeners because, conspiracy theories and misinformation surrounding the SDGs has increased. In fact, in recent years, we've seen claims that the SDGs represent a hidden global agenda or that they serve only certain political interests. So these theories, to be honest, can create real barriers for implementation, addressing, for instance, common misinformation in terms of the SDGs, the COVID, the impact on policy making and so on, which is kind of worrying. So before I'm going to ask you about this and to share your opinion if you want about this, I want to basically like make a little exercise or game, you know? It'd be a rapid question fire when I'm going to give you some headlines and you're going to try to say whether it's biased, legit, or fake. Okay? It'd be a round of rapid fire questions. Cool?
Let's go.
I have a clarifying question. So,
Yes.
Bias, meaning it's only from their perspective. Is
Yes.
that what yeah,
Correct.
it's not taking the full picture into account.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Which basically aligns
Mhm.
with their ideological
Mhm.
thinking, right?
Okay. Yeah, gotcha.
It's three. And also, like, to be fair, it's really hard to know whether it's biased, legit, or fake. But let's make the exercise.
Mhm.
Okay. There'll be three though. First, the SDGs are a cover for global elites to control local government.
It could be bias or fake.
I'll say fake in the end of
Yeah.
yeah, but probably yeah, bias or fake, but more intended to say fake.
Mhm. Agreed.
Okay. The world is failing on sustainable development goals, say scientists.
I say legit. You are failing into to achieve like the main goal, at least the El Dorado that we have waiting for. I believe that's in that way legit. But even if we have achieved some, but like the big picture, yeah, also legit. Yeah.
Okay.
Agreed.
The Agenda 2030 aims to take away private property through environmental regulations.
Oh,
Bias.
yeah.
It
Okay.
depends from case to case. It was depend from case to case, in my opinion, because you have like
Yeah, it's true.
Okay. Another headline: the SDGs will enforce global taxes on nations.
again depending on the point of
I have
view.
no
Yeah,
idea.
bias, I says. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. The last one: funding gaps and growing inequalities derail SDG progress, warns the UN.
Can
Agreed.
you
Yeah, funding gaps and growing inequalities
Mhm.
like constrain SDG progress, warns UN.
yeah, okay. Also yeah. Yeah.
Legit.
Legit, yeah. That's very legit, yeah.
Okay, okay, that's how we finish the exercise. So, you know, around these, what do you guys think? Okay, very briefly. You know, first, what do you think about these conspiracy theories are about? And second, to what extent, what do you think is gonna maybe make a negative impact onto your initiatives, even either from the practice perspective or from the research perspective? Let's begin with Tanja. Is that okay?
Sure. Um, it's painful to hear these headlines because it creates more separation than everyone coming together with the same agenda. I don't think it enables practitioners on the ground to be able to show that their work is making a difference or that people really believe it or care about it. And yeah, it doesn't feel that it supports the goals of the SDGs. I find that one about the first one, I think it was the global elite or something, or trying to control people with SDGs. It, it I can understand that perspective from people's views if they want to be more free in the way they live their lives, but it also doesn't create harmony in terms of getting everyone on the same page. And that is the goal of the SDGs, is to get everyone on the same page and headed towards the same goal. So I find many of those misinformation things are just creating more separation than getting everyone on the same page, really.
Sure.
The bottom line. So it doesn't help us in any way.
Sure. Thanks. Rui.
Well, Andres, colleagues, I believe that only this question will give a new episode. But well, let's start trying to demystify what I'm thinking about this issue. Well, I see this as, for example, where the social media totally wants, because social medias want to sell, want to see blood, let's say. So, but at the same time, there is no smoke without fire. So, and we work on this field. I will say that many people, of course, that we are here with the best intentions to develop this kind of SDGs, because by the end of the day, even there is a lot of theory conspiracies, and also the human, like we like it. So I believe that as human beings, we like also to sometimes to believe in this kind of conspiracies, and also because this sells this all this. But I believe that they are fostered also because in some regions there are some leaders that are using this agenda for their own wills, and therefore it will give momentum to all of these conspiracies. But well, sometimes I think about it, and but the point is, I look at the big picture, and I think by the end of the day, we are trying what we are doing. It will change somehow. It will gonna change, and it will be for the best of the society, and that's. For example, that's why, at least from my point of view, I believe that Tanja will be the same. So it's trying to keep working on it. But if you want to trying to close it, like this issue, like, or at least to give more, try to close at least our research or what we're doing, is to trying to create like more transparency about it. For example, the research, we trying to publicize our research, our results, for people can get results, and they get at their own mind because of like this misinformation. So they can get, for example, our research will be like in public access or like in open access. Also creating, when you are working in more into the field, for example, to create more talking with the communities, and also showing the results, what's happening for the people, also getting knowledge about it, and not only what they saw in the social media, or not only what they saw or listened into the news. So I believe that will be the only way for people to create their own minds. And by the end of the day, we'll try to figure out if as all can understand as well, if some of those that we say that is biased until they are legit or
fake.
Or fake. So I believe that's the only way. But yeah, but by the end of the day, what motivates us to working on this field, I do believe that even there are some of these kind of conspiracies. Yeah, I believe that in the end of the day, I look to the big picture, and I believe that we can give like a contribution to society if we follow this kind of path. So
sure. That's fantastic. Listen, I want to finish this segment because usually it's easy. Yeah, I would say that it's easier to maybe problematize what's going on. But let's try to go next step and try to throw some ideas to solve the issue. Okay, so let's do this exercise, the three of us. So I was thinking, how can we improve the reputation of the real impact or the real value that is generated by either research or entities or organizations or initiatives that are trying to create a world more sustainable? Okay, I start from my part. Okay, as a researcher, as an academic, I think we have to be better at transferring knowledge. We are really bad to transform theories and concepts and research into information. Honestly, we need to get better in social media and creating content, right? Like even, doing something like, it's not even silly. We can do something serious, but we really need to go and try to put the word out there and make it more attractive. I think we need to try to step out from this kind of like, I don't know, snobbish world of using fancy words, and we really need to do it though. Okay. And as a practitioner, I would say, and we trying to do like vastly for a long time. Tanja witnessed that, to create content about the how business are run, that they are definitely self-sustainable, and how they generate value. So what I'm saying is, invite those colleagues of us to constantly, create content in terms of marketing, because I suppose to some extent all the business allocates some budget for marketing to create content, how well they do it, and how they do it, and how they trying to create this value. And I'm pretty sure like consumers, especially conscious consumers, they can do more about it, because everything is about the consumers. If you think about it, it's about the consumers and so on. So that would be my two ideas. What do you guys think?
Tanja, you want to go first?
Sure, thank you. I agree with you, Andres, about the it's really the branding, but and the wording. It's going to back to what we've noticed in terms of our communication and translating SDGs into a more lived experience. Who am I as the human? How do I make a contribution and be responsible for my local place and my community and my life? And it's an education aspect. It goes even deeper in terms of giving people a place to find where do they belong in the story of SDGs and making impact in the world. But yes, it belongs to the consumer at the end. We're all people. How are we all contributing to the shift that we want to see in society? That's really it. So it starts with the individual, and yes, it requires education and discussion and being more out there in terms of showing how your actions are creating this change from a business perspective. And I constantly lean back into the process that I have learned, or the worldview of the regenerative way of living or cultures. It also goes into permaculture kind of background, and it's also acknowledging the way that we are as humans are part of nature, that we live in an ecosystem. So to constantly come back to those basic principles of how a business is part of an ecosystem of other businesses, so other partnerships. So how do we build this relationships and collaboration with other organizations, thinking from an ecosystems perspective? The wording of SDGs is, as you said, very difficult sometimes for the person on the street to understand, and even for practitioners sometimes. So it's really bringing it back to the human level, like we were saying before. In different areas, what are the human needs that are being asked to be fulfilled here? So that, because at the end of the goal, we're all trying to get to a place where humans are living in a meeting their basic needs, but also moving in a direction of thriving, and also taking care of society and our natural environment. So how do we bring across that language to everyone, that this is a process we all want to go through, utilizing the SDGs, but rebranding the words, but not in a way that we're losing the impact of the SDGs. But it's becoming more of a lived experience. That's what I'm trying to get at. It's not in your mind of ideas and thoughts. It's actually a lived experience of the things we do every day. And every day we have an impact of how we are behaving in society, both in our social way as well as our impact and behavior in our environmental replications. So both from an individual having that awareness, also from a business perspective, that we're talking to individuals that they can facilitate that process for people. And by doing that, you will be meeting your SDGs that you've met. So it's a two-way process, and it requires this exactly constant communication, but also being aware of what are the values and what is the end result that we're all trying to get to, and bringing people on board in that process.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Rui?
Well, I guess you guys have said almost everything that I think the same, but I try to elaborate a little bit more because I totally agree with what you say, Andres, and also with Tanja. But if I want to elaborate, I'll try to elaborate a little bit more, and also from the experience that you have with all of this. Yes, the academicians that we all into this the university in this bubble, and do not you should sharing much more our knowledge and transferring the knowledge to the outside world, and also the way that we speak with the public, sometimes with the very technical language. So because everything can be explained in different way, we need to figure out which is the public that we have in front of us and try to explain, because everything we can explain in different ways. So we also need to try to manage this kind of language that we use, for example, in these speeches. And also other important issue is that the population only cares about what they use well. If they not feel part of all of these initiatives, they not want to care about it. So we need to bring it once more into this kind of projects. So it's ongoing, and also this research, and also trying to bring all to the same boat. And also we have something in the academia. There is, as Andres knows quite well, and probably Tanja as well. So we have like something that we are, but could be like structural issues from the universities and also the system, because we are asked, for example, to publish in the top ranked journal. That's take a lot of time, and also you just use that. For example, okay, I publish like from cross-border cooperation, like in the second best journal in the world of planning, and that's a lot goes to your ego to to keep moving on your career. But okay, but at the end of the day, you use a lot of resources. But how many lives have you changed with that? And also the project. So so yeah, I guess this is the mentality but should came from the base, like structural change that we should change, because we are working with public funding. So this is the funding of us all. We have like this kind of social obligation, let's say this, to work for in the well-being of the society. So we should manage our research and also this kind of work in a different way. So totally agree what you guys said, but it's yeah, also my point of view, because we should bring the population to our work, and also to manage the way that we talk with the population, also to do it much more in a way that people will be easily accessed to our research, and put our ego aside and more focus into how many lives we can try to change or improve with that research that you are doing, instead of our curriculum.
Yeah. Thank you, guys. Thank you, guys. With this, I think we can close this segment, and we're gonna go to our last segment of the podcast, which is looking forward, the future of the SDGs. And let me say, like, sustainability is bigger than the SDGs, right? The SDGs is just a framework, which is being like, okay, pushed by some policy makers, but they've been for 1,000 years. I think there were a lot of people trying to be more conscious about the environment and try to be more biocentric, right? Even, okay, if you don't want to go backwards, but the last 50 years, there've been a lot of factors from academia, from the practice, trying to make new initiatives, taking care of the environment, right? So looking forward, the SDGs, which is only 6 years away from 2030 deadline, there is much to discuss, right, on how we can accelerate progress. But one area that, according to the reports, stands out is the role of innovation and collaboration. Technology, partnerships, and sustainable finance, I think all will play critical roles in the next phase of the SDG. So Tanja, you worked on the ground with organizations, trying to innovate to meet some of the goals. So what do you think as the most important shifts needed to ensure the SDGs remain impactful in the future?
Well, thank you for the question. It leans on kind of what I was saying before. I feel that a much more holistic perspective needs view in terms of viewing things more as an ecosystem and how one action impacts other areas. So an ecosystem has, you have good soil. So what is the soil that we're building both in our culture and environment? It's going back to basics, really thinking about actionable steps that will meet all those needs that we've set for ourselves for 2030 and beyond. And creating a society that we're, all thriving in and everybody feels seen and heard and participate within. How do we create that? We create that through frameworks that bring us back to basics. But also, as you said, technology will always be part of that process because that's the trajectory that we're on. Technology can be used as a tool, not as a replacement to human connection or a replacement to collaboration, but it can be built in as a tool that facilitates it, just like we're on Zoom right now. We're connecting and sharing. I see that I see the work of the bioregionalism. I see the work of regeneration as answers to building that into the process of SDGs, of stewardship of land, even the work of the eco-village sectors. They're also doing wonderful work. So there's lots of kind of initiatives that are starting that can lead towards some blueprints that have very impactful projects that will, can be built into the framework of the SDGs and easily and low cost solutions. And it all goes back to also bringing people on board and reminding them that they are a part of the process. They are part of the solution. Humans are not here as just the destroyers of the earth. We're also here as the caretakers and the healers of earth and our societies. And reframing, it takes a whole lot of reframing and reminding and building up and sharing in community of building these processes together, not only of the different layers, of society and government, local and national and global. It's a full process which technology would be an answer to solve that kind of collaboration. On the ground, it's, for me, that is the key, is changing hearts and minds from all levels to work in that direction. With key projects and solutions to help move it along.
Wow. Tanja, I loved this concept of how we have to perceive ourselves in the planet, in the world. I love it. I hope we changed this kind of, stigma of being annihilators or obliterators or devastators or ravagers of the world and being healers. I love that. I think I would stick with this. This is very, very, very nice. Thank you for that, because it's true.
Thank you, and that's what I hear from everything, that this is what we are really trying to bring across, is the healing of our self-image as humans, and that we have the capacity to create this change. We want to do it, and that's what I also see with everything that you're highlighting as well, both Rui and yourself.
Yeah, thanks for that. Rui, in terms of research, right? Based, upon what you hear, read, or were investigating about, what do you think can be done better in terms of innovation or policy making to improve what we have now in terms of achieving the SDGs?
Thank you so much, Andres, for the question, and also, yeah, totally. It was also inspiring the answer from Tanja, just backing a little bit back. So it was, in fact, if we can be part of the solution, it would be much better. That's the way, I guess, the only way. But to answer your question, so I'll pick your word that sustainability is bigger than the SDGs. This SDGs for the 2030. So. And that's I guess that is the main point, because sustainability is like a long-term journey, and we have, for example, this policy recommendation because people want everything like for now, and sustainability not works like that. So sustainability is something that we need to be this kind of persistent. We need to get this kind of line of consistency to get through that point. And we have, like, for example, at our democracies, that's said, it's great, that's perfect living in democracy, of course, but the point is, even if we change the governments, some structural lines we should not change, because we are talking about government from 4 years, and then comes a new government, and that's start everything from the beginning, and that's terrible for sustainable development and sustainability, because sustainability do not cares about if you are from the left or for the right or first whatever, because this is something that we should follow, like into a long path, like a long term. Sustainability not achieved from today for tomorrow. This is like a long run. So that's, I believe, that is the most important issue, and that the population should be aware, and the population should also take some kind of action here, some call for action, let's say, for the politicians to stick, for example, with this kind of sustainable development practices. Don't matter which will be the government that will come next. So this should not change, because if you change like 4 years, you are back into the starting point. So it's totally terrible for sustainability, and also for the future. I do believe that we learn a lot from these 17 Sustainable Development Goals, and I'm almost certainly that we have like a next set of goals, because this is like strategic planning. We have like this, because all of those goals are very relevant, but probably we have nowadays, with the reality of nowadays, we have perhaps other 17, and I'm not sure if we're going to be 17, if we're going to be 15, we're going to be 10, we're going to be 20, but perhaps some even more relevant than this right now with our reality. So, but probably many of those will remain, but will replace others for another ones that will be even more relevant. And for example, here, I guess AI, for example, will play like a critical role, because there is something that will definitely play a critical role in our lifestyles, in our changing, for example, as Tanja said as well. So we are in these Zoom meetings after the COVID pandemic, but now they just have much more tools. So we are changing, like, and are improving or not sure if it's improving, but changing at least in a very, very, very rapid way. So I believe that in the future we will have like a new set of goals probably, and let's hope at least that we learn as the policymakers, as the technicians, as the researchers, as even the communities, to learn from which are the best thing that we have done with this set, and also with all of the gaps and the not so successful, let's say, that happened here, to get some learn lessons for the future. I do believe that will pass through that point totally. And of course,
Sure.
always trying to put in mind what Tanja says, is that putting in mind that we should be part of the solution, and always, as you said, sustainability is much bigger than this set of goals and the next set of goals. So this is like a long-term path. So we need to get that in mind, also the policymakers, and I guess it's the only way that you can achieve the so desired sustainability.
Yeah, I agree. Actually, like, learning from both of you during this podcast has been really cool, because that's why I try to bring different perspectives. From my perspective, or from what I think would be beneficial for the future, I would love to have more sophisticated debates, right? And conversations. Okay. I know, like, transform these, from theory to action is a long way, but we need to pave it properly. I think we need to think about, the well-being economy, you know, challenge the concept of prosperity and growth. I wouldn't say even degrowth, but at least think and talk seriously about this, right? Because as we said before, sustainability and economic growth, it doesn't work. So we need like a serious conversation, less ideological, less political, I wish, because back in 2000s, it was the Millennial Development Goals, and I never heard anybody appropriating, this kind of concept and criticizing for their own benefit. So I suppose we, as practitioners, as a researchers, we are contributing to pave the way for more thorough and more serious conversation. So guys, with this in mind, that's bring us to the end of today's discussion. I think we covered the progress, challenges, misconceptions, and future outlook for the SDGs. I want to thank you both, Tanja and Rui, for sharing their unique insights. Tanja, of course, for bringing us practical perspectives from the front lines, and Rui for sharing the critical academic view that is also essential for understanding these goals. Obviously, I want to thank our listeners for tuning to Invisible Experts podcast and this little show, the Sustainable Talk Show, part of the Invisible Experts podcast. So I'll see you later. I don't know if you guys want to say something to wrap up.
Yeah, it was a pleasure, of course, being here and also to have this kind of discussion. And I believe that this discussion is so relevant that we want to do it like to try to demystify, even if it was short, but even we demystify because, well, we are from different backgrounds. And I do believe it was quite interesting with demystify these kind of issues and this initiative. So, Andrés, I'm quite, it was quite interesting to be in this kind of conversation because it still helps. It's what we are been talking is exactly moments like this that will help to create like this our vision that's also Tanja talked about it. You talked about, I talked about. I believe that these are the momentums, and it was a pleasure also to meet even meeting Tanja. It was also a big pleasure, and also to see you again. It was always a pleasure. So count on me for what you need for this initiative. So always you know that you count on me. So thank you so much. It was a pleasure from my side. Thank you.
You want to say something, Tanja, or
Sure,
should
yeah.
wrap up? Sure.
Gratitude. Thank you to you both. I also enjoyed this conversation, and as I mentioned in the beginning, it's wonderful what you're creating here, and I enjoyed really hearing Rui's perspectives and him adding the academic and his worldview into the process. It was very informative, and I really enjoyed the discussion with you both. So thank you.
Thank you, guys. Just to finish, one screenshot for.
Okay.
Cool. Okay, guys. With that, we wrap up. Thank you again, and thank you for that.
Thank you. Have a
Thank
great
you.
day,
Everybody.
guys.
Muchas gracias.
Bye. Ciao.
Bye. Ciao.
Bye.